Hi everyone, and welcome to Lazy Lion. It's officially fall, but in a bid to hold on to summer just a little bit longer, we felt that there was no better anime series to help us do so than Samurai Champloo. Just thinking about it brings back the sounds of cicadas and the smell of sunflowers. Wait, do sunflowers even have a smell? Putting that query aside for now, we have to tell you that Samurai Champloo is an extremely entertaining show that takes history, specifically the Edo period of Japan, and spins it right on its head, giving it a fun and fresh take that's sure to entertain you. In this video, we'll be covering the plot and creative process of Samurai Champloo, as well as a brief history of the samurai code of conduct called Bushido, and how it relates to our protagonists. So if that's something that would interest you, make sure to stick around. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's get started. Cue the intro. Samurai Champloo takes place 60 years after the Warring Sengoku period, when Japan has finally been able to obtain a state of peace. Here, we're introduced to three unlikely traveling companions who for some reason or other have all crossed paths and now find themselves on a vague and impossible sounding quest. If you're not already intrigued, then let us tell you. This show is ridiculously funny and has some truly exciting and beautifully choreographed action sequences with compelling characters and poignant themes that will have you crying by the end of it, either from laughter or from the bittersweet nature of it all. Whatever the case may be, there will be tears, or at the very least, some light misting. Now, our three unlikely companions are Fu, a feisty and resourceful 15-year-old girl working as a waitress in a tea house, Mugen, a 19-year-old wandering swordsman from the Ryukyu Islands who's both hot-headed and reckless, and Jin, a 20-year-old ronin of exceptional skill who possesses a calm and stoic temperament. So I guess the question is, what happens when a young waitress, a temperamental vagabond, and a trained ronin all meet in a tea house? Well, in a word, pandemonium. Sweet, sweet pandemonium. Of course, a fight breaks out. The tea house burns down, leading Fu to suddenly be out of a job, while Mugen and Jin await execution by the local magistrate. As first meetings go, not the worst. Now, let's pan back to Fu. As she's standing amongst the ruins of her former place of employment contemplating her future, she's approached by the tea house owners and offered a place to stay in the next town over. A kind offer, though luckily for us, Fu sees the tea house burning down as a sign that it's time to move on and go on an adventure. But traveling around Japan in the Edo period as a young girl is dangerous. If only she had some skilled bodyguards to help her on her journey. That's when Fu hatches her genius plan. If she saves the samurai who burnt down the tea house from certain death, they'll owe her their lives, meaning they'll have to help her on her quest, right? Well, after getting them to tentatively agree to her plan, she proceeds to do just that, and talk about starting their journey off with a bang. So when her harebrained scheme actually pays off, all three of their fates are irrevocably bound together. That is, at least until they complete their task, of course. And what exactly is this grand adventure she's embarked them all on? Why, she's looking for the samurai who smells like sunflowers. Yeah, sounds easy enough. Now, the real challenge will be whether she can keep Mugen and Jin from trying to kill each other long enough for them to even reach their goal. So who is behind this cool and stylistically creative show? And how did it all come about? Well, first we'll have to start with the animation studio behind it, Manglobe. When Manglobe first got started, they wanted to focus on releasing original anime that wasn't an adaptation of any pre-existing works. And the first anime that they ever produced was in 2004, with, you guessed it, Samurai Champloo, which was created and directed by the legendary Shinichiro Watanabe, who is of course famous for giving us the classic Cowboy Bebop series. Not too bad for a studio debut. Now, Watanabe actually first started thinking up the concept for Samurai Champloo while working on the Cowboy Bebop movie. stating that he wanted to create a character that was the complete opposite of the mature and sophisticated Spike Spiegel, which is how we got the brash and impulsive Mugen. Watanabe also added the calm and refined Jin as a counter to Mugen's personality, drawing from the hero archetypes found in Kabuki theater. So we have Mugen as the Eragoto character and Jin as the Wagoto character. This contrast in the character lineup also subtly plays into the comedy duo or double act format, which leads to some pretty funny interactions between the two. So this show definitely has comedy, but what it also doesn't lack is style, which is probably one of its biggest selling points. As we mentioned in our Cowboy Bebop review, Watanabe has a habit of meshing different styles and genres together, especially when it comes to music and film. I mean, we can clearly see this in Cowboy Bebop, where he mixed space operas, spaghetti westerns, and film noir, together with jazz and blues music. Watanabe does something similar in Samurai Champloo, where he mixed together old-school samurai films, aka the Chambara genre, with hip-hop and lo-fi music, fusing old with new, which also explains the name Samurai Champloo. Samurai is pretty self-explanatory. It's a show about samurai. But what you may not have known is that the word champloo or champuru is taken from an Okinawan dish, Goya champuru, which means to mix things together to make something new, in a way to remix. So I guess you can think of it sort of like a samurai remix. This further helps highlight Watanabe's personal commitment to the hip-hop influences found in Samurai Champloo, stating, "I believe samurai in the Edo period and modern hip-hop artists have something in common. Rappers opened the way to their future with one microphone. Samurai decided their fate with one sword." Very cool. And the hip-hop influences don't stop with the title. So be ready to see some graffiti, rapping, and even breakdancing. Oh yeah, the production team definitely took some creative liberties with this story, unabashedly so. This series was originally targeted at youngsters who didn't particularly have much respect for history and the past, with even the narrator of the series making jokes about the anachronistic details of the show, and how it doesn't really matter in the end because this is all for entertainment purposes. This isn't something new, because just like Samurai Champloo, old Chambara samurai films used to take creative liberties as well when depicting the past, where the romanticism of medieval Japan and its samurai heroes was more important to convey than the actual legitimacy of certain historical events and details. Kind of like the West's romanticism of the American frontier and cowboys. This doesn't detract from the story though, and if you can get over its historical inaccuracies, it's an extremely enjoyable series. Something else that's enjoyable is the soundtrack, which is a mix of hip-hop and lo-fi. Just listen to the opening theme battle cry and try not to vibe along. I dare you. It's one of those things that makes you feel cooler just by listening to it. And this track was created by the late Japanese music producer Nujabes, who many consider the godfather of lo-fi hip-hop. So if you've ever studied or worked on a project while playing some lo-fi hip-hop in the background, like we did while working on this video, then this is who you have to thank for it. Now, when watching the show, many might be a little confused since Mugen isn't exactly who most people would think of when first thinking of a samurai. That honor would naturally fall to Jin. But it turns out that actually they both have an equal claim to the term, albeit from completely opposite ends of the spectrum of Bushido. How's that possible, you ask? Well, what is Bushido exactly, and what relation do our protagonists have with it? The word Bushido means the way of the warrior, and is, in a nutshell, the code of conduct that all samurai were supposed to adhere to while holding that title. If you look it up, its definition will read, the code of the samurai, stressing unquestioning loyalty and obedience and valuing honor above life. Sounds chivalrous. The problem with this definition, though, is that it fails to acknowledge the evolution of the term and its values throughout the ages, and is actually more of a modern idea of what the word Bushido should mean, instead of what it actually was originally. Bushido, along with most values and social norms, were influenced by what was going on in the country at the time, such as politics and religion. And because of that, there are 4 main eras of Bushido that have taken place. So let's break it down. First, we have the ancient Bushido era, which took place from the year 794 to 1333. At first, samurai were just skilled mercenaries who were hired mainly to serve as bodyguards to protect one's home, or as police to maintain social order. At the time, the word samurai wasn't even in existence yet, and they were referred to as tsuwamono, meaning a strong and courageous person who fights with a weapon. The old samurai style of fighting was to overwhelm one's opponents with one's skill and power, and because of this, they are remembered as being true warriors and terrifying. Next, we have the Sengoku Bushido era, which took place from 1336 to 1603. This is the time of Oda Nobunaga, when everyone was obsessed with increasing their territory and with that, their power. Bushido was at this time influenced by Zen Buddhism and Confucianism, and became not only about achieving great physical and military skills, but also striving to obtain a strong mental state, which they did through practicing self-control, physical discipline, and meditation. The hope was that this would allow them to face their enemies with a calmer and clearer mind. Honor also became a key part of Bushido during this era, almost obsessively so, with the motto being, die rather than disgrace yourself. Not surprisingly, this led to the rise of seppuku, suicide by self-disembowelment. That is not to say that this wasn't performed prior to the Sengoku period, but it became more prevalent as a means to retain or restore honor after losing to an enemy in battle. Performing such a painful act also proved that you were both courageous and had guts. I guess figuratively and literally in this case. After the Sengoku period, we have the Edo Bushido era, which took place from 1603 to 1868. Things are a little different in the Edo period in comparison to the older periods, since Edo Japan was relatively peaceful, meaning that samurai were no longer able to acquire honor on the battlefield. Instead, they began to have a more political role in society. They also had more time to develop a set of virtues in which those of their station should follow. These were influenced not only by Buddhist and Confucian ideas, but also Shinto ones. And this is when the term Bushido really comes into existence. Since you could no longer distinguish yourself in battle, the only way to achieve honor was by living your life in a just and sincere way. A samurai's character became just as important as acquiring physical and mental strength. Next comes the Meiji Bushido era, which took place from 1868 all the way to 1945. Even though the samurai class was abolished by 1876, many moral virtues from Bushido were incorporated into the everyday lives of the Japanese. In all, there were 8 virtues: righteousness, heroic courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honor, self-control, and loyalty. Except here, loyalty to one's lord had shifted to the emperor and the nation, and the empire used this to radicalize its population, and is ultimately what led to the kamikaze pilots in World War II. They were convinced that dying in battle would bring them and their country honor. So to recap, Bushido has definitely changed over the years. But some key values seem to be consistent throughout all these eras, which are 1. To develop one's skill as a warrior by mastering one's weapon and martial arts. And 2. To display valor in battle, so to be fearless in the face of one's enemy on the battlefield. If we look at just these 2 criteria, then both Mugen and Jin fit the bill, with Mugen falling closer to the ancient Bushido era, and Jin more towards the early Meiji Bushido era. Though we think it's probably more appropriate to call them Ronin, since they're both masterless samurai, merely going with the flow and moving along with the times. But I guess Ronin Champloo just doesn't have the same ring to it. At the beginning of the story, Mugen and Jin are both kind of just roaming around aimlessly, without any real purpose or direction. It isn't until they cross paths with Fu that they're presented with a goal. Interesting Easter egg, Fu's name actually means wind, so maybe she's the wind pushing them forward in a new direction. An argument could even be made that Fu herself can be considered a samurai, since she possesses a tanto blade, which was carried mostly by the samurai class. And even though she might not fight in the way that Mugen and Jin do, she still runs into danger head-on, displaying some serious bravery and will to fight for what she cares about. She also happens to check more boxes of the Bushido traits than her companions perhaps do, being the moral and ethical compass of the group, especially if we look to the Edo Bushido era. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Could Fu also be considered a samurai? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Either way, the great thing about Samurai Champloo that differs from Watanabe's previous work, Cowboy Bebop, is that while Cowboy Bebop was all about being weighed down by one's past and trying to run from it, Samurai Champloo is all about facing the future head-on and embracing change. We're not gonna lie, it can get pretty bittersweet, but we thoroughly enjoyed the fact that they approached change as both an ending and a new beginning. And if this review has piqued your interest in the show, you can watch the whole thing over on Funimation. Now, despite this anime being heavily anachronistic, it's still filled with actual historical events and people. They just skew them a bit to fit the story better. But that doesn't mean you should throw everything out the window, because it's great for giving people topics to do some further reading on. We'll be going over some of these topics over on our blog, such as the Shimabara Rebellion, Japan's trading agreement with the Dutch, wooden Block Ukiyo-E paintings, and we'll even be discussing why Japan's so obsessed with Vincent Van Gogh and his sunflowers. So, if any of those topics interest you, we'll leave a link to them in the description box. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to click that like button to let us know. And you can also hit that subscribe button for more videos like this. Thanks for watching. Stay obsessed.